This podcast is part of the Some Buddies Network. You're never alone when you've got some buddies.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons, or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today, Richie and I are hitting the road to review Bart on the Road, but we're picking up another friend along the way for this road trip. But before we get to her, let me introduce to you your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid. How you doing today, Rich?
You didn't say anything about any hitchhikers, Miles. I'm a little uneasy about this one, I think.
She's not as sketchy as the hitchhiker they pick up in the episode, so it's fine.
Which I did not remember that moment, but we'll get into that. We can get down that lonely road. The man, the myth, the Dorcas Malorcas. It is Miles.
Very nice. So today, surprise, surprise, yet another local Dallas comedian that I have had the fortune of coming into my life through the wonderful place I know as Dallas Comedy House. Joining us today, Dallas comedian Jame McCraw. How are you today, Jame?
Great. The sun came out finally.
Yes, it sure did. We've had some hella bad weather around here. In fact, it caused us a little bit of issues today just getting connected, but you are a rock star and you persevered, and shout out to your boyfriend Bruce for helping us get reconnected so we can have this awesome conversation today. But thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to talk to you, and we want to start the same way we always do, and that's by asking you, how would you say that you are connected to The Simpsons?
All right, so I just grew up on The Simpsons when 4 or 5 years old, and a weekly tradition until we were fortunate to have it be a daily tradition or a bi-daily tradition, and watching up. And when I was old enough to get a job, I would record it when I went off to work and then watch it after work.
And I assume you mean on VHS.
It was on VHS, yes. Yes. This is before TiVo. Is TiVo still around?
I think they're a company still, probably. I don't know.
I want to say
I think
no.
The internet killed most of that
Yeah.
stuff. Very cool. Yeah, so it sounds like you're right in our same range. We also grew up with... The Simpsons has been a part of our life as long as we knew it, and we always find it interesting. It sounds like your family is a Simpsons supportive family. It sounds like it was something you guys did together?
Absolutely, yeah. Sundays, we didn't really eat dinner as a family, watched television as a family, which I'm really thankful for.
It's the American dream right there.
Yeah.
Very cool. So something that stood out to me, and the reason that I invited you to be a part of this episode or for this podcast specifically, is when we were talking at the bar that we both work at, and this episode came up in conversation, you lit up like a Christmas tree. Like, you got so excited, which is like, you're usually a very happy person, but you got this glow about you that I would describe as unusual. And tell me, what about this episode drew you to it so much?
It's kind of, I think, because I loved this episode and I would really get excited when it would come on in syndication, as it takes these great characters and it puts them in situations that we haven't seen them before. And there's all the animation, like these like beautiful drawn shots. It's almost like filmmaking that you don't always see on the show. It's really sweet too. There's all these sweet moments between Homer and Lisa. Me and my dad are close, and I don't know, I just like seeing them bond in this different environment. Aww. There's so many great gags that I think of, maybe not daily, but come back to you. Also, I really love road trips and wigs.
So it's got basically everything that you could possibly want from a Simpsons episode. It is a really unique one, for sure.
And when you think, like, when you're a kid, getting to the point where you're old enough to drive, and this episode obviously aired before I was old enough to drive, and it was just, you think about a magic moment where you can get a fake ID, run across the road.
I think there's something really funny about how innocent this is too. Like there is this scene we'll talk about where they go to the bar, but then they immediately decide like, let's do something a little bit less adult. And it's funny to me that like there's an innocence to what they use their fake ID to pursue in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's funny, we were, again, chatting about this just a little bit at work, and somebody asked what episode we would be discussing, and I immediately described it like, Bart on the Road, oh, which one is that? I'm like, oh, it's the one where Bart and his friends go on a road trip, and you're like, well, actually, you totally woman-splained that, well, actually, it's the episode with Homer and Lisa, where it's like daddy-daughter at work day, or whatever, and I just thought it's funny that, and it's so true because, and The Simpsons does this so well, is there's not just a one story. I mean, they always do A lines and B lines, but both of these stories stick out as very special. And I think it is a lot of the relationships that they're based in this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Homer and Lisa stuff is like very, very warm and heart touching in this one. Like it's one of their better interactions where you feel like they're very connected, and it is almost like having two A-lines with how they tie it all together. But I remember seeing the advertisements for this episode when it first came out, and I was so excited. And after watching the episode, I was just like, "Oh my God, Bart basically, this is so cool!" And oh my God, they're going to Tennessee. What? But it was so dang funny the whole way through. And touching on what you said about syndication, I was always really happy when this episode came on in syndication because I feel like it was always one of the ones that too often whenever you saw replays, or I was just missing it when it did. So this one always stood out in my mind as a very, very fun episode just all around.
100%. I agree with all that. And I think the idea of it almost has two A-plots is really interesting. And again, to your point, especially the way they're more woven together in this episode than a lot of episodes are. Like, a lot of times they're running parallel to each other and almost unrelated to one another. But the resolution that we get in the end of this episode really nicely ties a bow with both pieces of the string, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
And the introduction of the reoccurring character, Langdon Alger, I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah, he goes on to be one of the more popular reoccurring not guest stars, but characters in The Simpsons.
Guesters.
Yeah, guesters. Absolutely.
Not quite a gangster, not quite a sir, but I already forgot what it was. Let's
it's your
just
new
move
dream
on.
profession either way. We're derailing this immediately. It's fine. Shout out to the derailers on the Somebody's Podcast Network. But for now, I do want to comment too on something you said, and that's just that I was so moved by how excited you were when I talked about this episode. Like that, I immediately was like,
Miles.
"You've got to come on you've got to come on as a guest on the show," and specifically for this one. So I'm so glad that we were able to make this happen. But something that Josh Weinstein points out on the commentary, and I will say the commentary on this one has Bill Oakley, Josh Weinstein, Richard Appel, the writer, David Silverman, the director, and Matt Groening all joined in to talk about this one. And Weinstein talks about the idea that this is an episode that for some reason people just don't remember. Like it tends to fall off of the radar, but then as soon as people watch it, they immediately remember just how great and wonderful of an episode it really is. And it for whatever reason, just has a quality about it where it tends to get lost in the shuffle among other great episodes in this season, but it really stands on its own. I would say that this one will probably be fighting for a spot on the top 5 list at the end of our season when we do our recap. And that's saying something in this season because this season is stacked.
I hate how much we agree right now already off the bat because it's better to have a little tension every now and then. But yeah, like I was thinking, man, this one I'm gonna have to try to find a spot for this one in my tops list.
We are, again, talking about Bart on the Road, which originally aired on March 31st, 1996. Right off the top, speaking of controversy or tension, if you will, Josh Weinstein on the commentary said that this episode actually aired on April 7th, 1996, but there was no other mention of it that I could find, so I was very confused. I wasn't really certain where the discrepancy is, but he just has that one thing where he says it at the very top of the commentary, and then they never go back to talk about it. We'll talk a little bit more about this commentary at the end of the episode, because it was a unique one for an unusual reason. But I just want to tease that for now and save it.
Well, to make more controversy, my guidebook, The Simpsons: A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family, says May 1st. This thing, the longer The Simpsons go on, the worse this guide gets at putting correct facts in it.
May 31st is what I have as well, for what it's worth.
Notes say March 31st.
Oh, I thought I heard March 31st.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do have March 31st.
That's 5/31/96 on the guidebook. And the next episode that came out after it says April. So.
Well, now I'm concerned that could be a typo on my part, but hey, whatever. This is not the show for facts, I guess. Now we're going a new direction going forward.
Simpsons, damn it!
That's the one thing. That's the one reason we have people listen, is they just want to have accurate information on when the show actually aired, and we can't even do that, Richie. We need to go scrub the stink of failure off of us.
Yeah, I'm not going to try. That's the first step towards failure, Miles.
True. This episode has no chalk gag, which, as our guest last week pointed out, we had Daniel Matthews, another local comedian, and he mentioned how unusual that is. But truth be told, at this point, we are on a very long streak. I think we're about 5 episodes in a row now that have not had a chalk gag. And it's almost becoming a lost feature of the opening credits, though I do know it will return eventually. I just think it's interesting that they have been omitting them for some time now.
Well, we got 2 new showrunners that are putting their own stamp on the episode, which you talked about. So I think they're going to be a little more for the 2 seasons that they're on, and then when we switch showrunners, anything is possible, Miles.
It's true. I also think that just they are showrunners that tend to run on the long side, as we've talked about. There are certain showrunners that run short, certain showrunners that run long, and these 2 definitely tend to be on the running long end of the spectrum. So a lot of times there just isn't room for Bart's attention.
Maybe he was a good student that week.
Yeah, I think that's even more unlikely. Though
He was on
Skinner
the
was clearly already checked out.
Time.
Yeah.
Good point. That's what it was. It wouldn't have made chronological sense for him to be writing lines. That would have just destroyed the entire fabric of the Simpsons universe. We do get a couch gag on this one. It's a bowling pin setter that comes in and resets the Simpsons family on the couch. And we open up in springtime at Springfield Elementary School, where everybody is ready to get going on vacation, none more than Seymour Skinner. Unfortunately, though, it seems like there is a mistake at the airline, and to get it resolved, to get an aisle seat, a kosher meal, and the day fixed from Saturday to Friday morning, it's only going to cost him an extra $7,830.
I don't think he wants that. He wants to be in the middle.
GM Chrysler, I can't afford that.
I like how he almost swears but doesn't at all.
Quick question for both of you. Have you ever had an airline flight with a meal? I've never flown internationally, and I've never had a meal on a flight, like an offered meal.
I have flown a couple times internationally, and I have had a meal, and like it's a staple in like stand-up comedy, especially in like the 80s and 90s, of like how bad the flight meals are, and I mean, they weren't great. It's basically like a microwave dinner.
Yeah, I've had them before when I was younger. Like, I think they had like lunches occasionally, but I just remember they never tasted very good.
Now you get 1 pretzel and 2 peanuts, and not a bag, just literally 1 pretzel and 2 peanuts. That's what it's been reduced to.
And pay for that.
Both unsalted.
Yeah, boo. What's even the point? Are you torturing me? I will say real quick from the commentary again that the writer of this episode, Richard Appel, talked about his inspiration was simply when he was a kid, he switched from a public to private school. And one of the things that he missed most about public school was take your kid to work day, because he literally just got to go hang out at his dad's office and do nothing. And it was like the best. And also kind of what Jame talked about at the top of the show. Just the idea in general, as remembering back when you were a kid, and I feel the exact same way. Up until I turned probably 15 or 16, whenever I actually got my license, it was nothing I dreamed of more. Like, it's like literally a card that gives you freedom to be your own person and explore the world. And he just thought it would be really interesting to put the Simpsons characters into that state. Combine that with the fact that also, like Jame, the Simpsons writers just really love a good road trip, and especially writing for a road trip, because it gives you the opportunity to put unusual sets of characters together in an unusual set of circumstances in an unusual location, and that is just a lot of fun for the writers of a show when you're so used to writing it over and over each and every week, getting to do something unique and special.
I really love also that there are like little details that are things that happen in a car that they're kind of like everyday things, like the cup holder. Let's get a cup.
We gotta get a cup. We gotta get a cup.
I mean, that was a running gag with me and my best friend Hull. Anytime we were in the car for very long, it's like one of us is gonna say it. Let's get a cup.
Well, you don't want to like make that cup holder feel unappreciated.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on into the episode, we see that Skinner's solution to not having to pay out all of that money, which honestly, that joke's just too real, because I swear that's literally how much it costs to change your flight whenever you have to do so last minute. It really is just insane. So Skinner comes up with the solution of go to work with your parents' day.
Yes, go to work with your parents' day. Tomorrow you will learn by doing and apply your knowledge of fractions and gem situations. And I love how he responds to Bart again over the PA system, where Bart's like, go to work with your parents' day.
Yes! They do treat it like a two-way radio a lot.
Okay, did either of you have that, like a rumor circulating around your school that whenever the teacher left the room, that they actually were in some other part of the school listening to whatever was happening when they were gone?
No, we just assumed they were getting drunk in the teacher's lounge.
Yeah, probably so. Sure, that would, like, don't say any bad words, you know, like they can hear you in the office. Like it's like
That's
it actually was
chalkboard.
Two-way chalkboard. They can't actually hear you, but they can see everything you write.
It's hilarious.
Viva net niage. What does that mean?
Almost immediately, Bart gets the urge to join the Navy. Wait, no, sorry. Lisa gets really suspicious as Bart takes dibs on Mom's job, Marge, and decides that he's going to go to work with her, and by that, he's going to sit on the couch and literally pour milk into his cereal box, which is such a great bit of animation. He's like eating cereal directly from the box. And the best part is, at first, it's like, just he pours it in, no big deal. But then over the course of the conversation, the box does start dripping exactly like you would expect it to. And just making that real world application of what would really happen in this instance was so funny to watch.
It's something so minor, but like it just makes you know, like they had to actually take that and animate it the whole way through, and it was probably a nuisance. But it's always the little details that they add, like we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, that just make it The Simpsons.
But Lisa is protesting this. I still don't understand why you get to stay home and watch Mom work.
Because I've always been an advocate of women in the workplace, Lise. I can't help it if my mom's workplace contains our TV.
He's just watching cartoons. Lisa, you'll have a fine time at the plant with Dad. You've been interested in nuclear power for years.
I signed numerous petitions to shut down that plant.
Well, there you go.
Mom, you're blocking the TV.
But unfortunately, as they start reading over, or unfortunately for Bart, I should say, as they start reading over the sign-off sheet, it very specifically says, under parents' occupation, please note, homemaker is not allowed, as it's not real work. That's why you don't get paid. Oh, wow, low blow, Simpsons, hitting them where it hurts.
Oh, then Lisa hits Bart where it hurts.
Yeah, Lisa totally sabotages her brother's dreams of a day off when she makes a note that, Marge's sisters have a traditional job in the, traditional workplace, which for what it's worth, let's shout out to homemakers out there, because that can be tough as hell. and should be paid. But hey, that's not for this podcast to determine. That's for smarter people that talk about not cartoons all day to decide. Or maybe the world would be better if people who did watch cartoons made those decisions. I don't know. Again, another podcast. But Bart is told that he will be going to work with Patty and Selma at the DMV.
Gruesome twosome.
Gruesome twosome indeed. But right off the bat, we get another one of those jokes that's just all too real for anyone who's ever had to go to the DMV. Some days we don't let the line move at all.
We call those weekdays.
Good one.
We're not Beavis and Butthead, by the way.
Patty and Selma's voices are hard. I stand by, unless we take up serious smoking, it's just a hard thing to imitate people, so take that effort with what you will.
I always feel like they're turning into Krusty the Clown. I can't help it.
Conspiracy. When Patty and Selma combine, like the Wonder Twins, they turn into Krusty the Clown.
Dragon Ball's shit right there, I think.
I also like here we get a little sequence where we see what some of the other kids in school are doing with their going to work with dad, specifically Milhouse, where we get some of the curtain unveiled again with Milton. I just fucked that up. Milhouse. Spoiler alert for a future joke. Milhouse is dad, Mr. Van Houten. Apparently has just the dopest job. Working at a cracker factory is way cooler than you might expect.
Especially with the atomic dome.
And they have sleds, dog-led sleds going through the piles of salt.
But I like that Bart just thinks, at least I'm not as bad as Milhouse, and then you see this wonderful experience.
Oh yeah, they think that it would be terrible working at a cracker factory, but it turns out to be absolutely great.
He's definitely a thrill hoe in this scene.
Lisa, as we already talked about, actually ends up going to work with Homer, and right off the bat, Homer starts the day like he normally does, with a donut, but Lisa points out that she would prefer fruit.
This has purple stuff inside. Purple is a fruit.
Quote of the episode right there. I cannot tell you how many times I've said purple is a fruit in my life. Honestly, I forgot it came from this episode, too.
Yeah, but it's all over the place, everywhere you look online.
We'll have to remember that for our vegetarian friends next time they ask. Anything purple we have to offer counts,
Absolutely.
Right? I also enjoy here, as Homer's kind of explaining his workplace, they go over the map of nuclear sites around the country, and as the safety inspector, I'm responsible for changing most of these light bulbs.
Why are there so many burnt out ones?
Because they won't hire me an assistant. The commentary points out that while a lot of people think this is actually a joke, and we'll actually get a better image of this map later when we see Homer actually doing his job, but this was based on a real-life nuclear map of all of the power plants in the country, and a lot of them will say 1 and 2 and be right next to each other. Those are legit 2 nuclear power plants side by side with one another.
Oh, Diablo Canyon 1 and 2.
Yeah. We do start to get a little bit of a tender moment here as Lisa's talking to her father about, how exciting the job is, and he's kind of down on it at first, but Lisa points out that, hey, maybe we together could make your job more fun. She points to the radiation suits hanging on the wall and asks about them. Homer has no idea what they are. That seems problematic. I don't know. Maybe not. They decide that they're going to play astronauts.
We also missed a few seconds before where it showed Martin at the stock market making millions, but then losing almost all of it to where he only has $600 left.
He started with $10, dude. And in 30 seconds, he's a millionaire for about 12 seconds.
Soy!
This legitimately, I was a dumb kid. I've admitted that many, many times. But this made me want to, invest in the stock market so bad because I'm even if you do bad, you make $600?
It's that.
That follows, yeah. I think that's right.
But it is an important part, you're right, Richie. That sets up our future plot here in a little bit where if you're going to go on a road trip, you got to have gas money. And fun money.
And apparently, even though you buy a bunch of stuff at WeWorld, you still have $600, which I don't understand.
And enough left over to buy some pretty dope-ass wigs.
Yep.
Which I can't, we're going to talk about it for sure, but that image just sticks out in my head so hard from this episode. I mean, it's like the most iconic image from this episode, but the four boys just wigging it up curbside is absolutely fantastic.
They be wigging out.
Am I mistaken? This is the one where Martin, the little toy dog that yaps and jumps.
Yes.
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
What is that dog's name? I had Flipsy. It's Flipsy, the little robot dog, which apparently did not run him out of money. And I can't imagine, I don't know, that probably didn't cost that much, but still, it seemed like a pretty advanced toy for the time.
I remember seeing like those outside of KB Toys, which is a toy store.
Yeah,
I remember.
I love KB Toys.
Okay, I'm not alone. And that's a loud, strange toy to me. It didn't even look like a dog, but for some reason, I think I really wanted one.
Can you imagine if, like, all you wanted for Christmas was a puppy and you opened that up under the tree? Like, such a depressing gift.
Or if the parents like poked holes in the box to make you think.
Oh, that's so.
Yeah.
They just left it on yipping the whole time.
We'd be terrible parents.
That sounds like a prank Jimmy Kimmel would have people do and record for his show. It's like the cotton candy, the Halloween candy on steroids.
It'd be such a disappointing way to learn about death. This is a bad guy. The yip slows.
You get that like low battery sound that starts coming out, and like, what's wrong with Yipsy? But when we cut back to the DMV after we leave Homer and Lisa playing astronaut in the radiation suits, we see that
sweet moment too. By the way, like that was a very sweet moment already off the bat.
It does. It sets a really strong baseline for the relationship with Homer and Lisa, and we've had some strong Homer Lisa episodes in the past, like the football betting one jumps out in my mind, but I think what's different from this episode versus that episode and others like it is they do set up right off the bat that they are having a very sweet bonding time in their relationship, and there isn't an ulterior motive like there has been in the past.
Very true, very true.
And that's just another great example of how The Simpsons balances the humor and the heart and the smart and makes just that trifecta of great, great television. Speaking of smart, we see Cletus the slack-jawed yokel trying to get his driver's license taken care of. He's getting his picture, and they literally print them right there, which I thought was really funny because, again, that was not my experience at the DMV, and maybe that was just a different time, but every time I go to the DMV or have had to go to the DMV in the past, I just get like this shitty little paper printout, and then it takes like 6 weeks to get the actual license.
To be fair, Selma does say, I just got to go laminate your license. You'll get it in 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, they used to have just like a physical picture that they would put on like a typed form, right? And then laminate it.
Yeah, that's how it used to be, or that's how it was when I got my license. And I remember, like, especially when you turn 21 and you're trying to buy alcohol, that paper license is, like, immediately a red flag for, like, every bartender ever.
Yes. I've lost licenses before and tried to use the paper license to get in to a bar, and they just, I mean, like, I'm 30 years old, please let me... No, this is a piece of paper. No, I don't want to see your Facebook profile, to see your image, you know. And
you kind of get it because you could see how that would be easily faked, but at the same time, it's
completely.
It's frustrating in the moment. And that's when Patty and Selma make their big mistake of the episode, but what really gives us the catalyst for the story to get started here, and that is they leave Bart alone with the ID printer, and he, of course, immediately decides to snap himself a selfie and print his own ID. And immediately, I love when he's showing it off, Milhouse, 25 years old? You're not 25 years old. This ID is completely fake.
Yes, you're right, Milhouse. It is a fake, which makes it a fake ID.
A fake ID? Cool.
I want to point out that it's only been 2 weeks since Selma's divorce, and you're doing just fine, Miles.
Yeah, that's true. She bounced back
she
good.
Recovers fast.
That's funny. I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Though, again, there is the theory that these Simpsons episodes do not happen in chronological order. They could be happening in any number of order, so it may have been a long while since, or maybe she hasn't even been married yet. Who knows?
I find it more fun to think of it as continuity, just to see like how crazy and how quickly people get over things. Simpsons reset, if you will.
For sure, yeah. And it's important that they reset the universe, of course. I would like to point out that the Quickie Mart has a sale on Duff. You can get a beer suitcase for $12.95. I really want to know more about this product and where I can pick it up.
When I first saw it, I was like, does it say beer or deer? And then when it panned out, I was like, oh, I want to see a beer suitcase. Is the beer in the suitcase or are there individual cans? I need to know this.
Lots of questions on that one.
Exactly.
So you've got a new fake ID. You have the whole town ahead, or to explore essentially, and it's spring break. The very first thing we see them do is go to an R-rated movie, which is called Naked Lunch. I'll point out that Naked Lunch is actually the title of a book by William S. Burroughs, and it's not nearly as sexual as it might sound. In fact, the book is more of a series of essays designed to be read in any order, and they in great detail explore this person's addiction to drugs, and it's actually a very apparently difficult read, not in that it's a bad book, but it's just haunting to kind of read these firsthand experiences of what this person went through while he was really, really struggling with addiction.
Yeah, David Cronenberg did a movie. I haven't seen it, but I know Roy Scheider from Jaws is in it.
No joke. I didn't know that.
No joke. Yeah, I definitely haven't seen it yet, but I wonder.
Well, if that's the case, I can think of at least 2 things wrong with that title then.
Yeah.
As we talked about earlier, too, the boys do decide to step into Moe's tavern, and Moe gives Bart's license a look, and everything looks okay to him. Somehow, with one ID, they're allowed to buy 3 beers.
It is Moe. I mean,
honestly, he probably would have sold it to him without the ID at all. You're absolutely right. I do like, though, as soon as they're handed their draft duffs, the barflies are like welcoming them to the party. Hey, you guys ready to party? And they immediately reconsider their life decisions. It's kind of actually an oddly, like, good message to kids. Like, I don't know if that was, like, their intention, but, yeah, I mean, alcohol is great if you want to enjoy it responsibly, but definitely not something that you should be fucking with at, like, 10 years old.
Well, Homer did something similar a while back, too, when he decided he was going to go home and spend time with his family when he saw everyone, like, looking depressed and drunk, if correctly.
Yeah, that was when he gave up drinking for like a month, and then when he goes back, you'd think that he immediately wants to dive right back in, but through his now sober eyes, he kind of sees the dark side of the bar life, if you will.
In the dark corner in the bar.
Jamie and I work in a bar, so we should probably mention at this point, keep drinking, folks. Keep drinking. We need it.
The cause of and solution to all life's problems.
Our livelihood depends on you consuming. So they leave the bar. They're still excited. Milhouse is even, after not drinking, yelling like, "Spring break, yeah!" And then after a silence, "Well, when are we gonna get rowdy?"
I love that that's rowdy for him. It's so precious.
Such a nerdlinger in the most adorable way.
Yeah.
I love how Nelson's idea of getting rowdy is we could shampoo her.
You do have to be surprisingly old to rent those things. Like, I don't think it's even 18. I think it's like 21 or 25. Or
well,
maybe I'm thinking of a rental
25
car.
and not 21 in the episode because you got to be 25 to rent. And I think, do you have to be over 21 to get R-rated movie tickets for kids nowadays? I don't remember if that was a thing or not.
Yeah, actually, I think like you yourself can buy a ticket at 17, but to buy a ticket to be like the accompanying adult, I think you do have to be either 21 or 22. It might be a theater-specific rule for all I know. I don't know.
But I like that they went old enough to make the storyline work.
Yeah. I don't really make it a habit of going to R-rated movies with children
anymore.
Often, so it's not usually a common thing I deal with.
Really just think about Nelson's possible carpet. Anyways, like, what could be all over it that maybe he really actually just wants to clean something. Aside from the absurd age restrictions, you know.
Well, and when we see Nelson's home life, even for just a brief moment a little bit later, maybe that's like his way of rebelling. It'd be like cleaning would actually be the most rebellious act he could do at home.
I like that duality. He's used to dirt.
He wants this like wholesomeness, this Andy Williams life.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice.
You did it.
So this is actually where we see Martin coming around the corner with that mechanical dog, Flipsy. And he immediately tells the other three boys that he won $600 at the stock market. And for a moment, Bart is kind of oblivious to the point, but then he immediately kind of has a light bulb click. And that's when we see that they are now cruising down the streets in Bart 6'4". Actually, it's a White Crown Vic, but that song dictated I said White 6'4", so... Martin is so excited. He has the opposite reaction to what either of the three of us would to Flipsy. Oh boy, Flipsy, you and I are going on a road trip.
What?
Nelson just throws the dog out the window, which at first it lands and actually does a little flip and everything seems fine. And then a car comes by and crushes it. And that actually brings us to the end of our very first act. We have Lisa at work with Homer. We have Bart now literally on the road, like the title of this episode. Roll credits, if you will. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back for Act 2 of Bart on the Road.
Okay, Mr. Most Days Off. Now we're ready for the TeePublic ad.
Head over to tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly right now to support our show. Get yourself some Best Darn Diddly merchandise and help grow our podcast. I messed up there. Can I get another take?
Okay, just a second. Out of the way, amateur. Hey, it's Krusty. Go to tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly. Hey, it's Krusty. Go to patreon.com/bestdarndiddly. Go to popthreads.com and save 15% with the discount code Simpsons. Hey, it's Krusty. Go to bestdarndiddly.com to get all your podcast needs from the greatest show on earth. Learn from a professional, kid. All right, Krusty. We're ready for your take. Krusty?
We come back for our second act, and right away, Bart is putting Operation Spring Break into effect. He's passing out envelopes containing alibis for a 1-week road trip, and we immediately see the kids break to go tell their parents, essentially, this new airtight and utterly plausible alibi to use on the parents. Millhouse, I've been selected to represent the school at the National Grammar Rodeo at the Sheraton Hotel in Canada.
What part of Canada?
We see Martin say the exact same thing, and that's when we cut to Nelson's home that we talked about just before the break, and I love his line so much because he just walks out of his filthy home and yells, I'm going away for a week, see ya. Sad but true.
And I want to point out that when I first saw this scene, I always thought Martin was lying to his parents about it. But then I love how in like a few scenes from here, they actually show that he thought that it was a real thing. So I love how they do that, where you think one thing, then they keep it in the character and make it seem plausible.
Very good point. That would be insanely out of character for Martin to lie to avoid a grammar rodeo. If anything, he would lie to go to a grammar rodeo if he was like told he wasn't allowed to.
But you think in that instance he has lied, though.
Yeah, that's a good point. They don't really tell you that information until a little bit later.
Right.
And the only one that's being completely honest is, kind of the bad kid, I guess.
That's a good point, yeah. Interesting. I do like that Marge is already just, like, really sunk into this lie. Like, you would think there'd be a little bit more skepticism, but The National Grammar Rodeo? I wish I were going. Oh, wait. I wish I was going. Is that right, Bart?
Huh?
I love that. It's so, like, just, he could care less, and his fly is immediately folding underneath him, but no one seems to notice.
Except Lisa.
Well, of course, Lisa. She is the best student in school, and how come she's never heard about this competition?
Maybe because you are, as we say in Latin, a Dorcas Malorcus.
That's not Latin. Mom, Bart's faking it.
Lisa, you've had your glory. Now it's her.
And this is where we cut to some of the animation that I think Jamie was talking about at the beginning of the episode, because we get these wonderful views and these 360-degree spins of this car as they're going down the road. And there's so much detail in each and every one of these shots. And they actually talk about this specifically, this shot, and just some of the scenes that we're going to see throughout the rest of this episode, how this, like a lot of other episodes that take place in unusual locations, was very time consuming and at times very difficult for the animation department, because again, for us, it's just another setting that looks like it exists in the Simpsons universe. But anytime they explore new places, the art department has to completely from scratch create them from the bottom up. And there is a lot of both new shots with the car scenes and new locations with the various places we see them travel.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful animation for sure. There's this great scene where Milhouse is fiddling with the radio and the knobs, and Nelson actually smacks him. Milhouse kind of rats him out, or tattles, if you will, like he might to a parent that were driving. Ow, Bart, Nelson hit me.
He sure did.
Just so nonchalantly, like, yep, that's what happened. Moving on. And that's when Milhouse makes a wonderful discovery. Jamie, take it away.
Cup holders.
That's right. They've got them, and they've got to put something in them. Bart, we've got to stop and get a cup.
Not even a drink. A cup.
That's a good point. It can be completely empty for all Milhouse cares.
Yeah. And he likes to fit things into their places.
His favorite toy is probably that toy we had as kids, or a lot of people had as kids, where it's like the different shapes that will only fit into the correct slots.
Yeah.
Oh, his favorite toy is
the ball goes in the cup.
Exactly.
Hey, I want to turn. Mom, Bart's swearing.
Ow! Damn it! Ow!
So the next joke is great, but also has actually happened in real life on more than one occasion. If you look it up throughout history, especially in the early days of cruise control, citizens weren't 100% certain what that really meant. So there are more than one documented cases of car accidents caused by the fact that somebody set their cruise control and confused the concept with what is essentially autopilot. And as we know, they are very much not the same thing.
What?
Though technically this seems to kind of work out as a shortcut for the road trip, because they just drive straight through a cornfield as Bart is literally lounging in the back seat. Like, don't worry about it, I put it on cruise control.
He's playing a good host.
What's Bart reaching the pedal, by the way?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, his legs are really short.
Yeah.
I have a small side note. I've had, recurring dreams since childhood, and I don't think it's directly tied to this, but somehow I'm driving the car from the back seat. I mean, it could be completely related to this. It just gets into your psyche.
Well, maybe it's just you're predicting the future and you're seeing a world where we live with self-driving cars.
Yes, I had them all planned out years ago.
Yeah, I think Elon Musk might owe you some money.
I'd love it. I'll take it.
Bart, your name's Miles. Oh, crap. Let's just move on.
Tomato.
Let's just move on. I was going to say you're a precog.
We cut back to the power plant where we see that without Lisa, Homer's job has become boring again, though Lisa, I think, did actually motivate Homer to do some work that he normally wouldn't, because he is actually, in fact, changing those light bulbs from that map that we saw earlier. He decides, though, he's gonna give the home a call and see what's going on, and there's kind of a sweet and sad moment here. It's really sweet when Lisa answers, but it's very sad for Marge. She answers the phone. Hello? Oh, homie! Hello! I can't remember the last time you called me from work. Oh, you want to speak with Lisa? Oh, that's kind of heartbreaking, honestly. You really feel for Marge in that moment.
Especially because they add I can't remember the last time, which means it doesn't happen.
It's not something that occurs on a regular basis, or at all.
Hi, Lisa. How's your spring break going?
This is actually a failed joke because they said that they wanted this to be funny, but it's something too related to what Lisa would actually do. And that's, she's learning about owls, and that makes Homer think that she probably won't want to spend another day at work with him, but she's like, oh, no, I would love to go to work with you. I can always learn about owls at summer at bird camp.
Yeah, that seems like something she would do.
That was supposed to get a laugh, and they're like, oh, yeah, that does seem very Lisa.
I did like the slight chuckle because I was like, ugh, of course.
This is where we get to that aha moment where you understand that Martin really wasn't lying all along, because as they get through the cornfields, Martin declares, oh, we've arrived at the vast cornfields of Canada. How much further to the grammar rodeo?
Grammar rodeo?
We're not going to a grammar rodeo. That was just an alibi, Milton.
Martin?
Oh, it's so sad. They've literally been driving for hours at this point and have gone to school for however many years, and he doesn't even know his name.
They were semi-teams in the Lemon of Troy episode. I mean, come on.
Team Discovery Channel. So Martin immediately asks, so where are we actually going? And that's when they decide they should probably come up with an idea, and they consult the AAA guidebook. Nelson, for whatever reason, really just wants to see Macon, Georgia. But Milhouse has a better idea. Yeah. Milhouse decides, though, wait, how about a fair? And not just a county fair, not just a Europe fair, but a World's Fair. The World's Fair in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Keep reading.
The Hungarians have built a giant motorized Rubik's Cube, and the fair's symbol is the Sun Sphere, which sits atop a 266-foot-tall steel shaft.
What's inside?
An information desk. Cool. So this is actually based on the real-life 1982 World's Fair that actually did occur in Knoxville, Tennessee, and it was a huge failure by all, I guess, marks, because it just did not do well at all, even for a World's Fair. It wasn't the first or the last World's Fair either. There was a previous one in Japan. It was the only one in Knoxville, but legit, they actually really did have that Sun Sphere. That was something that really did occur. The previous World's Fair before that one was actually in the Expo in 1970 in Osaka, Japan, and then they did have another World's Fair 10 years later in Seville, Spain in 1992, but the Knoxville World's Fair did not do
You're
well.
saying people from all over the world did not want to go there. I'm just going to leave it at that. We love you, Knoxville.
Yeah, of course.
He was in the Navy in 1970, and he went to Osaka during the World's Fair.
Oh, that's cool.
And he's told me a story about this train that was so unbelievably fast that it was like it was the fastest train in the world at the time. And
was it a monorail by chance?
Yeah, that's what it
was.
Must have been.
I'm not trying to age you or your father, but when you say that, I kind of feel like he's Abe talking about a story.
Aw.
It was the fastest at the time, it was. I'm sorry.
Daddy things.
So the kids have a choice between Disney World and Knoxville.
Well, if you only have $600, Disney World's out. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, that's not even going to get you in the gate, man.
Yeah.
That's rough. I will say, too, according to the commentary, that when they first wrote the script, the kids were set to go to Fort Lauderdale, but they decided that, like, that's what everybody does on vacation, and they wanted to do something different, so they wanted to come up with a unusual, funny location, and that's when somebody spit out the idea of Knoxville, Tennessee to visit the World's Fair, which I think was a much better choice, honestly. I think that honestly, I would imagine over the 30 seasons, we're going to see the Simpsons go to spring break in Fort Lauderdale. In fact, I'm almost positive I remember an episode that'll be coming up in like 10 years that they go to a similar destination. It might be like Daytona or something.
Less than 10 years, they get kicked out of Florida for killing the old gator there.
Yeah, there you go. I knew it was coming up at some point.
Florida, that's the wang of the U.S. Wang of America, whatever.
So true.
I'm a monster.
So true.
Different Florida reference.
Oh man, our friend Bob from the Nerd or Not podcast, the Cretans Guild, he always posts these great news stories from Florida of just like total like redneck bumpkin ideas of people that just do the stupidest thing. I think that Texas rednecks and Florida rednecks might give each other a run for their money.
Absolutely.
So we cut back to the power plant where Lisa is visiting again. Homer asks if she had any trouble getting past the security guards.
Security guards?
Homer starts to show off how he usually buys lunch, and that's by stealing from the vending machine. The way I figure it, if the candy stays in the machine for more than a year, it's up for grabs.
I agree.
It honestly seems like it should be a thing. Like, they should at least discount it at that point, you would hope. But at the same time, I know I've seen some vending machines that do not look like they've been changed in quite some time.
Yeah.
They actually get quite the haul, too, and they are, I guess, with Lisa's extra help, they're able to get, like, an entire pile of candy.
And then they're caught and thrown in jail, or nuclear jail.
Smithers walks up. Simpson, what in God's name are you?
There's Razzles, Skittles, whatchamacallits, Twizzlers.
They all have hilarious names and are delicious.
I love it, like how he goat Smithers, and they are delicious.
Well, I am partial to Jolly Ranchers. Jolly Rogers.
Oh, which is like the most difficult of all those to eat.
Though honestly, maybe one that would last the longest, like in terms of like a hard candy like that, probably isn't really going to have too many negative effects from aging as long as it's wrapped up.
Those good old hard candies.
That is a patient candy. I never thought about that.
A patient candy, yes. That's how they should market it.
Is that the name of an improv troupe?
Patient candy when the lights come up.
There you go. I love it. Oh,
yeah, I enjoy that too, Miles, when he says, "Good work, Simpson," and then he walks in and goes, "Simpsons?" That's a cool little moment.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Great catch on that. So I'm going to boldly declare the next joke in the episode my favorite joke, which, Jamie, you may not be aware of this, but I have a tendency of declaring a lot of favorite jokes, but I'm going to try to stick to this one. I love
You've
that.
been getting better this season.
I'm trying really hard. You bust my balls enough on it. I'm trying to be better. So anyway, we cut back to the road, but we're not following the kids this time. We see another family, and it's a more traditional, you've got the dad driving, the kind of staple road trip scenario you might see in a sitcom or a movie. And the kids are getting out of hand, and the dad's getting frustrated. If you kids can't keep your hands to yourself, I'm gonna turn this car around and there'll be no Cape Canaveral for anybody. The kids immediately quiet up and snap into shape, but we see the boys' car roll up right beside them, and Nelson leans out the window and smacks the father in the back of the head. That's it! Back to Winnipeg! I love that so much. It just seems like such a good Nelson prank, like the type of thing that he would absolutely do.
But they're far away from Winnipeg.
Yeah, I would imagine. They've probably been driving for quite some time.
Maybe they were going to the National Grammar Rodeo in Canada.
Well, that's possible.
Yeah, it's nice to imagine, like, they're coming this way from Canada. That's funny.
You'd think they'd be driving slower, eh?
know, that dad seemed pretty angry for a Canadian father.
That's true. I didn't know Canadians got that hot. So this is where we get just this fun little sequence on the road that I really enjoy. It's very simple, really, but it's just the boys doing what you would expect unwatched kids to do. Like, for instance, they want to stop for ice cream, and we just cut to immediately the kids all have ice cream, and they're all eating. Nelson, for whatever reason, wants to go to a way station, and Bart's like, sure, why not? Milhouse wants to pick up a hitchhiker.
I don't see why not.
And that's where we see, and I love this so much because this is actually a reference to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's drawn to look exactly like the hitchhiker that they pick up in that film, which if you haven't seen it, that's the start to nothing but pleasantry and good times as they go on a fun-spirited adventure and nothing bad happens at all.
The sun sphere.
No, the hitchhiker in that movie is actually part of the Leatherface family, if you will, the cannibalistic family. And spoiler alert, but he actually attacks these young kids and basically is the one that brings them to the family so they can eat, so to speak. I don't know why I said so to speak. That's literally what they do.
Nubbin Sawyer.
Yeah, very good.
Wait, that happened in the Simpsons episode?
Wait, did you not watch the director's cut?
I guess not.
We talked about this. I love, though, this hitchhiker doesn't seem to have too much of nefarious means. He also just wants to stop for ice cream.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we see them all have cones again.
And he apparently wanted to be rehabilitated before he was released.
That was a really dark
What is
joke, I felt like.
Yeah, so, like, they needed an extra bed.
Yeah.
He says, well, I don't think I was rehabilitated, but I guess they needed the extra bed.
That is dark. It's moments like that, like, as a kid, obviously I don't know if it's obvious, but I didn't totally, but rewatching it as you get older, you just, that's essential for The Simpsons, or shows you love in general. They just kind of, there's little things you pick up on.
Oh, 100%. I think in The Simpsons specifically, I agree it happens with a lot of shows, but I do believe that because the nature of The Simpsons being a cartoon, and people of our age watched it more commonly, I think, as kids, just because it's like, oh, it's a cartoon, this is what we're supposed to watch, or in your case, like, your family watched it together. But there is a lot of younger viewers watching this show than I think was maybe necessarily intended at first. And then coming back and watching it with adult eyes, you catch so much that you missed as a child.
I honestly don't remember the hitchhiker, like, being a part of the episode at all, but maybe I just skinned out the memory of him because of how gloomy he is. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We get another actually kind of gloomy Marge moment, too, because back at the Simpsons home, Marge is helping Lisa pack for an overnight stay at the power plant, and she even says, with Bart gone, and now you with your father, I'm not going to have anyone to...
Thanks, Mom, bye!
And she just runs out the door as Marge finishes, talk to. Aww.
And Marge has the episode that, like, has always bothered me the most that comes up in a little while. And I want to hear about, like, anything they said on the director's commentary about that. I'm very interested. That's a tease.
I'm afraid I'm going to leave you very disappointed with that on this episode, but we'll talk more about that at the end, because again, this commentary was unique for a very unusual reason.
That was also a tease, but it ruined my tease.
We're all teases here. That's all it is. Yeah. So, back with the kids in their road trip, they approach Branson, Missouri. Bart's dad says, or Homer, I guess, it's just like Vegas if it were run by Ned Flanders. Which might be the most accurate statement ever. One thing I'll point out before we get to the destination of Nelson's choice is as we are passing through the town, one of the billboards says that Lurleen Lumpkin will be performing that night, which you remember from the episode back in season 3. That was the country music talent that Homer actually discovered and kind of unwittingly almost had an affair with. Nelson sees a sign, though, for Andy Williams in concert, which Look magazine says, wow, still got it. Something the commentary does point out is at the time that this episode aired, Look magazine had been out of production for 25 years.
Yep. Once the commentary and my guidebook lined up on the correct fact, I like it when that works out.
Rare instance, but it works out nicely. Bart is immediately like, we don't need to stop here.
Yes, we do.
And Nelson punches Bart.
He's good at hitting people in the back of the head.
I like that we're seeing the boys' perspective of this concert, and Martin, Milhouse, and Bart are reacting in a manner that you might expect of a 10-year-old boy, but Nelson is being brought to tears as we hear Andy singing, "My Huckleberry Friend, Moon River and Me." I hate country music, so I probably butchered that, but
yeah, we're not country people here. We don't live in Texas.
I didn't think he'd do Moon River, but then bam! Second encore!
But you can
they sat through a whole
relate-
thing twice.
relate to that feeling of like something you really appreciate. It's just
100%, yeah, but it's just funny
tender. I love this soft side of Nelson so much.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see more of it when he becomes Lisa's boyfriend to some extent later, but it's just so funny to see the type of things that we see that emotionally affect and move both Nelson, and in other episodes we've seen it with Jimbo and Kearney as well.
Well, you also talked about that's the Bill and Josh stamp right there, where we're going to flesh out some of the side characters that have screen time, and this is a perfect example of that, where there's more than one dimension to Nelson.
That is an absolutely fantastic point.
Yeah.
We cut back to the power plant once more, and we see that the sleepover is going well, but they're going to play a classic sleepover game of Truth or Dare. And I love that Lisa immediately puts her father in a tough spot when he asks for a truth. All right, who do you love most, me, Bart, or Maggie?
Go! All right, Dare.
So we cut to Homer on the phone, and he's talking to Mo. "Hello, I'd like to speak with a Mr. Snotball. First name Yora."
A snotball?
"What? How dare you! If I find out who this is, I'll staple a flag to your butt and mail you to Iran." Click.
So
Click. It was the way that he delivers that line, because it sounds like he has a script in front of him. Like, his heart's not really all into it, but it was very Homer, and that's what made me enjoy it.
Yeah. And again, it's a weird kind of truth or dare with like a dad and daughter is a little odd, but it's very sweet and tender the way they pull this off. Like the conversations they have, I think, that come out of this are really, really rich. And for instance, like Homer asks Lisa if she has a crush on anybody, and she immediately protests, and Homer's like, "I won't tell anybody," but that might not hold true.
"Dad, you tell everybody everything. Even Mo knew when I threw up on the dentist."
But she finally concedes and tells her father that she does in fact like Langdon Alger.
I have no idea who that is.
Yeah.
Neither do we, Homer.
Well, he's very quiet and enjoys puzzles.
So Lisa is she declares out loud that this is the best spring break ever. But once again, we cut to Marge, who might disagree as she sits alone watching late night TV.
You would think she would enjoy a little, like, peace and quiet, right?
Yeah, actually, it wouldn't be so bad if she maybe embraced it, but I think she's just lonely more than anything.
Yeah, I think, well, with the Homer at work all day and the kids off. Have we seen Maggie much in this episode?
Very, very little, though we're about to, and Marge, like, walks into the room.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's actually kind of funny because Maggie's asleep, and Marge at first is kind of like gently trying to like cough, wake up, and finally she just like straight up pokes her awake.
And that's the thing I was hinting. The poke has always bothered me, and I will give the Simpsons staff credit because I feel like that is the extreme in this situation. Like, you couldn't do anything else in the situation and get away with it from a story context standpoint. It just always slightly bothered me that she pokes Maggie awake, because it's a pretty firm poke.
Agreed. And any new parent I ever know, I mean, they absolutely love their children, but you like rejoice in those moments where your baby is actually sleeping. So I feel like this is the last thing you would ever actually do. But the next day we cut back to the boys, I should say, and they've reached the Tennessee border. Next stop, the Knoxville World's Fair and its fabulous sun sphere. And it's actually, again, great animation as we see the sun sphere start to come into the horizon as they're driving up on it. Unfortunately, though, the closer they get, the more dilapidated they realize that this fairgrounds have become. And in fact, now, it's not so much a fair as it is a wig store with a really impressive amount of wig storage. The Wig Sphere.
Please tell me that they did a wig store in this spot in Knoxville now.
Cannot say to that, but we're going to go ahead and assume that's true. We learn here that the AAA guidebook that they've been reading was in fact from 1982 this entire time, 14 years outdated at the time that this episode aired. And they learn from the wig salesman that the only thing in the wig sphere is, in fact, extra wigs. I love that he at one point pressures them. He's like, well, you going to buy wigs or ain't you? So that's when we cut to the iconic scene where the four boys sit curbside and they're wearing really dope wigs, but they are absolutely down in the dumps as they have no cash to spend. They spent the last $10 on a talking Al Gore doll.
You are hearing me talk.
And that's when Nelson, out of frustration, throws a rock at the sun sphere, which is just the last peg that it needed to topple the entire thing over. And of course, it lands directly on their rental car.
Well, it's not like they had money to put gas in it anyways.
It's a great scene, though, when the boys kind of come to terms with what's happening. We've got no car.
No money.
And no one knows we're here. We're stranded.
But on the plus side, I knocked over the sun sphere.
Nelson's so proud. And we cut to a wide-angle shot of the destroyed car and the depressed boys as we come to the end of our second act.
The second act ended the same way as the first act with the Nelson haha, which I really like.
That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't catch that, but it's haha to bring us to the end of both acts. We're going to go ahead and take another very quick break, but we'll be back for the conclusion of Bart on the Road.
This is the Secret Transmission Podcast. We are a podcast about the strange and unusual, the secret and the conspiracies, the fringe and the supernatural. We're a podcast that talks about weird things like number stations, the Bermuda Triangle, the Salem witch trials, time travel, the moon landing, the Zika virus, serial killers, cults, the deep web, UFOs, superstitions. We cover it all. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and Google Play. You can also follow us on Twitter, at Secret Transpod, at SecretTranspod. Come listen to us try to explain the unexplainable.
We come back to the dark and dreary scene of the car flattened. The boys have no money, so they decide that they are going to go with Plan B. And first step of Plan B is to figure out what Plan B is.
Should have gone to Macon, Georgia.
I don't know why Nelson being obsessed with Macon is so funny, but it really is. And he's just like, well, it wouldn't have happened if we did.
Curiosity, because of all the Macon references, I kind of did a little Google of Macon, and I was like, what is special, is there something I can tie to this? And the only thing I could come up with, I don't know.
Andy Williams?
It was a country music connection, which I'm now realizing isn't what I thought it was, as I see what I've written down before. I was trying to connect the Oak Ridge boys to the Allman Brothers, who are from Macon, Georgia, and it's the Oak Ridge nuclear facility. I'm like, I feel like Nelson is just obsessed with, country music. I don't know.
Well, if you just said it with confidence, I would have believed you. Like, oh yeah, the Oak Ridge Brothers, cool.
That's what it is.
Believe it.
Again, not really a country person, so that sounds right to me. The kids are trying to come up with an idea, and they come up with the idea to pawn Milhouse's glasses, which this is such a stupid but great joke right here. First of all, Milhouse is protesting because obviously he needs those, but the amazing thing is the pawn guy is actually like, wow, these lenses are perfect. Now I can re-bottom those antique Coke bottles. Of course, that's just such a fun twist on the classic, like, Coke bottle, like, glasses joke that has been around forever.
And the fun trick about how the pawn shop actually gives you a lot of money and not a little bit of money.
I love that, too, because, yeah, it's so absurd as the broker is counting 300, 400, 500, 600.
Hey, come back.
Milhouse is blindly feeling around the pawn shop, and he actually crashes through the very stack of Coke bottles that this guy intended to re-bottom. 500, 400, 300, 200, 100, 0.
See, but in that scenario, wouldn't he keep the glasses to pay for the damages?
Very good. He must be just like the nicest pawnbroker ever. So it's time for Plan C, and I love this scene too. It's really just a great bit of animation where we see the four boys running along the side of a train in a very classic style. You've seen lots of movies, especially older movies, where, like somebody that's got like their little, rucksack, the bandana on a pole thing, and they're running along the side. They throw their bags into the open cart, and as soon as they do, the train speeds up and leaves them in the dust, even though Nelson keeps running for quite a while trying to make it. But they're essentially now even worse than they were before, as they don't even have the bags that they previously were carrying.
I've always loved the animation of Nelson still running. Like, again, a little detail, we've said it 85 times in this episode, but it's a little detail where that is totally in line with his character. And just that animation where he's not giving up and still going for it and being headstrong about it.
Yeah, it is. That extra determination is a nice character trait.
Mm.
I hadn't even thought about that. That's a great point.
This is the point in the story where it becomes very, very, very handy to have an 8-year-old sister that happens to know everything about everything.
About owls.
Because Bart calls home and gets Lisa on the phone and is basically leveling with her about what's going on. And immediately Lisa has not just one, but multiple ideas of how he could get home. At first, he points out that you could travel for free if you were a stewardess. There's a long pause. Lisa's like, well, how badly do you want to get home? All right. How about a courier? They travel for free too. No, that's a terrier. They're dogs. This is the point of the episode, like so many episodes of The Simpsons do, that starts to wrap up very, very quickly. Like, for instance, we basically have about a page or page and a quarter left of script at this point. And there's a lot of resolution to occur, but we see a lot of scenes. Well, first, actually, we see Bart checking in to be a courier. The guy's like, well, you sure don't look 25, but your unlaminated out-of-state driver's license is proof enough for me.
And that's what I love, where you find out not only did he print a fake ID, but it didn't get laminated. So it would take 2 to 3 weeks.
Bart has the assignment to take human eyes to Hong Kong, and I do have to give props again to the animation, because they make a really good effort to make Bart look exhausted, because he's just been flying all over the place at this point. Not anywhere close to where he needs to go, though, unfortunately. He, if anything, is getting further and further away. There is a really fun moment where, as Bart's delivering said human eyes, we see Skinner eating in the background, and he actually spots him, but he kind of rubs his eyes in a manner like, am I seeing this?
What I want to point out is that Bart's speaking either Cantonese or Mandarin, and, like, he's really good at languages. Remember when he learned French, like, super fast?
Mm-hmm.
There might be something to that. He adapts very quickly.
Immersive learning is supposed to be very effective.
There you go.
There is a fun little Marlon Brando joke here when the next courier assignment is 5,000 Big Macs to Marlon Brando's home. That's when Bart is starting to lose it. I can't take much more of this. I'm counting on you, Lise. we see he's on the phone, and that's when Lisa is starting to become a little bit upset, and in fact, even hanging out with her father, spinning in the chairs like she's been doing so all episode, isn't really doing the trick anymore. And Homer notices, which I do want to point out here, that not only is Homer less dumb than he normally is in this episode, he is also a lot more emotionally in tune than he normally is in this episode. But I think you could justify that with him hanging out for a week of his very intelligent, emotional daughter. But I just love that, like, for whatever reason, Homer is kind of operating on another level during this episode.
I completely agree with you, Miles. There's something that happens here in a moment when he puts the helmet on, where I made a note of that, where like it might be my favorite story element in this episode with how fast he's angry, but he immediately has.
Agreed. But Lisa actually does level out, like you were saying. I mean, we're gonna see. Lisa's kind of on the fence about it, but Homer points out, we trust each other, and I mean, I haven't told a soul about your boyfriend.
Langdon Alger? Oh, I don't like him anymore.
So Lisa agrees that she's going to tell her father, but that Homer has to promise that he won't get mad and he won't tell anyone, especially Bart. Bart rented a car with a phony driver's license and drove Milhouse, Martin, and Nelson to a week out in Knoxville, and their car got crushed, and they're out of money, and they can't get home, and Bart's working as a courier and just came back from Hong Kong. And oh my god, this is you just described it a moment ago, but first thing we see is Homer's face just turns beet red. And Richie, since you like it so much, please describe it for us.
He turns beet red. You can see the wheels turning in his brain. He looks incredibly angry, and then he just very darkly, calmly says, "Yes, that's real people. Would you excuse me for a moment?" And that's when he turns around to the radiation suit and puts the helmet on, and you can just hear him screaming at the top of his lungs.
The faceplate actually fogs up too, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I love it because it's just a few seconds, but as soon as he takes the helmet off, he goes, "All right, I have thought this through. I will send Bart the money to fly home, then I will murder him."
No, then he'll know I told.
But I love how he immediately has a solution to it, which again, how does Homer always have all this money? Anytime they need some kind of cash, they come up with it instantaneously.
That's a very good point. But the actual plan they go with is actually really smart too. And it's mostly Lisa here, but they basically discover that there's another nuclear facility in Oak Ridge, and that they could order a part to have it couriered to them in Springfield. I actually really like that they even put that part under the care of Langdon Alger, just to keep calling back onto that joke. While they're talking, though, the technician he's ordering from is like, "I don't see anything wrong with your system. And so Homer has a great solution for that, too. He just pours Buzz Cola over it, and he's so fucking calm when he does it. It's like, he's just like, all right, and he's just destroying this insanely expensive equipment.
Oh, God, Springfield! Your T437 is completely unoperational. Oh my god!
The phrase jerk-ass Homer is commonly thrown around, especially when we get to the later episodes of the seasons, which we'll talk about when we get there if we need to. But I'm going to say right here, this is a jerk-ass Bart moment, because Bart ends up being the courier for this big box of equipment that he has snuck his friends into, who are actually asking for more air holes, is the only request they have, which seems very reasonable. And Milhouse is shushing them, being like, no, guys, shut up or they're going to hear, or specifically, shut up or they're going to hear you. But when you pan out, you see that it's just him in this box in this airplane. There's absolutely no one there that could possibly hear them.
And once you land, what's the worst thing that can happen? They open the plane and there's 4 kids that belong in the state there with you. It's whoops.
Have you ever had that slumber party moment where you're with somebody for an extended period of time, and they're making you insane, and you're just oh, I wish your mom would come pick you up home, pick you up and take you home early, and just
100%, yeah.
He needs that. I don't know.
I wish I could put you in a box with limited air supply.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Maybe that'll shut you up. The Simpsons reset here is so good. A lot of fun. We see Bart back at home at the dinner table, and Marge is completely still under the impression that he was actually at the grammar rodeo. Bart's explaining that he won't be going back because they forgot that it's supposed to be about the grammar.
So smug.
And Homer and Lisa just look so furious, and Bart looks so smug. And again, Marge is oblivious. That's when we cut to that night when Homer and Marge are sleeping in bed or trying to go to sleep in bed, and the phone rings.
Hello? Oh, hello, Principal Skinner. No, Bart has never been to Hong Kong. Good night.
Click. Ring, 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 ring.
Hello? Tennessee State Police? Oh, my son's car was not crushed in Knoxville. I don't know where to begin telling you what's wrong with that.
Click. Ring, 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 ring.
Hello? No, Bart is not available tomorrow to deliver a human kidney to Amsterdam.
And I love Homer at this point. He kind of hides under the covers and he's snickering at Marge.
Homer, are you laughing at me?
And that brings us to the end of our third act and to the end of the episode, Bart on the Road. First and foremost, Jame, thank you so much for joining us today. We had so much fun talking to you about this episode of The Simpsons that you're so passionate about. I hope you had a really good time as well. And before we get out of here, is there anything else that you would like to point out or talk about this episode?
No, I was really fun talking about the episode with y'all.
Oh, thank you so much. Again, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show, so thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Richie, is there anything that you or that book of yours wants to point out?
We pointed about in the guidebook with the exception of one fact. It points out that at the beginning of the episode, Principal Skinner calls the airline to talk about his plane ticket, and he actually says, "This is Principal Skinner." And he doesn't use Seymour when he's talking to the airlines, which is like a funny thing that you don't even notice until someone points it out to you. So, I mean, if you call an airline, you have to use your real first name. So I thought that was a very interesting fact. But other than that,
wonderful. That's wonderful.
I thought about it till I read it in the guidebook. But I want to point out that I love the last scene with Homer and Marge. I feel like it is unnecessary to have Homer laughing. I feel like it has nothing to do with the story overall. I feel like they didn't want to end the episode with Homer and Lisa being super pissed at Bart, because that would be a very uneasy feeling to know that there is this tension going on within the family. So I almost feel like that was a conscious choice. Give Homer a moment where like he's relaxed, and maybe that's why they made him laugh and have all these phone calls in the first place, just to end on a little bit of a lighter note. Like it seems like it was wrapped up better because of that last few moments.
Good point.
I don't know if everybody or not, but it does.
I think it really does a good job of kind of cleaning up all the loose ends, and that again, This is something we're always so impressed with The Simpsons Reset. So, great observation. I have been teasing something from the commentary since the very top of the show, so I'll go ahead and get that out now. And that's just simply, it kind of ties into the idea that this episode is one that people don't remember as being such a great episode until they watch it. And that's exactly what happened during the taping of this commentary. Josh Weinstein continuously calls out the other members of the commentary, which was Bill Oakley, Richard Appel, David Silverman, and Matt Groening, because they've kept not talking. They were getting so caught up watching the episode, and Josh reminded them that, it works better if you watch the episode before you come in for these episode tapings, because there really wasn't a lot of information from the commentary, because there was so many moments where these creators of the show that they created were so caught up in their own work, which in its own weird way was a really special thing to listen to. So this was a great episode. I like a lot of people they talked about. I kind of forgot. I knew I liked this episode, but I forgot just how great this episode is. I now completely understand why Jame lit up the way she did when we mentioned it so many weeks ago. And again, I don't think we could have had a better guest to bring such a passionate opinion to this podcast. So thank you again. Jame, is there anything you want to plug? Or you want to tell people where to follow you online, or any shows, or any projects, anything at all that you'd like to promote while you're here?
No.
Fair enough. I will go ahead and say, make sure you follow the Wiz Kid at @thewiz_kid23.
Make sure you follow Miles at Mr. Most Days Off, and most importantly, follow our show at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY. You can find us all over social media.
And as always, we just want to say thank you so much to everyone who hit that download button and came along through this journey with us, through The Simpsons, the Golden Age, and beyond. Make sure you come back next week, because as we record this, I'm still weeks of work ahead of me to make this happen, but I'm very passionately working on a very special project to bring to you to cover the episode 22 short films about Springfield. So come back and see us next week.
We're not going to. That would just be an alibi, Milton. Miles.
And until next time, be cromulent to each other.
I'm Jay.
I'm Bob.
And I'm Corey.
We are the Cretans Guild.
We're a trio of man-children whose friendship predates The Lion King, Green Day's Dookie, the N64, and the Chunnel.
We have backgrounds working in television, video games, radio broadcasting, creative writing, and pizza delivery. That's a large cheese, right?
On our podcast, Nerd or Not, you'll hear us talk about board games, TV, movies, comics, collectibles, video games, wrestling, theme parks. We even did a segment on f***ing pizza.
So check and listen to us on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. And check out our socials on Twitter and Instagram under Cretans Guild.
Welcome to the Guild.